Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to week 23 of the WiggyWam Get Your Property Questions Answered webinar. Really pleased that you are joining me here again live this week. It's Wednesday evening at just gone 6 o'clock. And for those of you who maybe have never seen one of these before, we are here every week in, week out, answering your pertinent property questions, whether you are an estate agent, a surveyor, a solicitor, a removals expert, a buyer or a seller, or anybody connected with the property ecosystem, if you like. We're here to answer your pertinent questions each and every week. So you can send those questions in to us via our email address, which is happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. That's happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. Also via our website, you can go to our website, which is wiggywam.co.uk. You can sign up and join on a free profile on the site and send your questions in there. Or you can go to Twitter, and our Twitter handle is @WiggyWam_UK. So that's @WiggyWam_UK. And you can submit your questions to us there. Now, I want to kick this week's webinar off by saying something that might be a little bit controversial, particularly for some of you that have been in the industry for quite a number of years. But I'm going to put it on the table straight away, and feel free to disagree with me if you want to. But the thing I want to say straight away is I believe that your clients need a lot more help and support in their moving journey than they perhaps led on, and certainly more than you think that they do. And one of the things that I see time and time again in the industry, which is exactly why we decided to start doing these webinars each and every week, is that there is a general assumption from particularly estate agents and solicitors, and I'm saying this with a whole lot of love to my kindred brothers and sisters in the industry who I've worked alongside for many years. But there is this assumption that any buyer and seller will know sort of as much as they do about moving house, and the reality is that's sadly not true. It's not even close. And if you think that 40% of first-time buyers won't even enter the market because they're scared of making a mistake or costing themselves a lot of money financially, or if you also consider that it's probably been 5, 7, 10, 15, 20 plus years since somebody last moved house, a lot of things have changed. There's a lot of things that are very different perhaps from the last time when they moved house, and they need help and support in navigating that journey. And I know that a lot of agents and solicitors out there do a very good job of hand-holding their client through the process. But what I'm going to advocate for you guys to really consider is actually getting on board with a content marketing, personal branding exercise for you and your business. And this works really, really well for individuals who work for these practices, because you can start to build yourself up as a personal brand and a personal profile, which you can take with you wherever you go if you decide to change positions in the future. But it also works really, really well to build up that knowledge bank and database for a particular firm. And why do I suggest that you do this? Well, if you think about most customer journeys for a solicitor or an estate agent, those customer journeys are very, very short. And if you've read Estate Agent Secrets, you will know the trilogy there. I talk about the customer journey. And again, for solicitors and estate agents, the customer journey tends to be very, very short, even shorter for solicitors. They tend to get a phone call that says, how much you charge for conveyancing? And then, somebody at the office goes, well, what's the size of the property? And, where are you moving to? Blah, blah, blah. And by spending 2 or 3 minutes on the phone, they've given them a price and then lost the opportunity potentially to sell them into why they need to spend a little bit more to get a premium level service with that particular solicitor. And the same is true with estate agents. Their customer journey tends to be the free valuation. And that will involve you going to the property, talking to them, maybe having a conversation around the value, the marketing price, the cost of doing this exercise with an estate agent. And then you follow that up in writing, and maybe you pick up the phone and speak to them a couple of times before they actually make the decision to put the house up for sale. And I think personally, those customer journeys are very, very short. Particularly with the sums of money that we're talking about, because we're selling, thousands of pounds worth of services here, guys. And the reality is, I feel, and the reason why I think we're gaining a lot of popularity with these videos that we're doing. And I'm not saying this to blow our own trumpet, please don't get me wrong. That's not why I'm saying this at all, but I'm trying to encourage you guys to pick this up and take it seriously as a real valid string to your bow in terms of your marketing outreach. And it serves a couple of benefits. First and foremost, you are demonstrating your knowledge as an expert in your field and in your particular area. And by demonstrating that knowledge, you are in effect giving people more confidence in who you are as a person, and that you actually have the knowledge to, you know, handhold them through this journey. And if you also think about it, if you're doing video or audio, people will start to build a relationship in their minds about who you are as a person, and that connection starts to grow. It's a bit like, you know, when you watch an actor and you like their movies and all the rest of it, and you see, wow, okay, you feel like you know that person, right? And it can be exactly the same when you start doing these videos and start putting content out online, is that you're not only demonstrating your expertise, but you're also starting to build, you know, a relationship with these people. And naturally, you will be the first port of call when they decide that they want to, you know, sell or buy a property. Okay, so it's a really important thing to embrace, is to start to put this content out there. And one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do, if you're struggling and you think, yeah, you know, Silas, I'd love to do this, I'd love to put some content out there online, but I am, you know, struggling with thinking about what to do, or, you know, maybe I've started it in the past and I've given up because I didn't have enough content, or I didn't know what people would want to learn about. I'm going to encourage you to go back right to the very, very basics of moving home. Okay, what does it entail? What is the journey? How do you get over, or how would you convince a first-time buyer to get over all of those initial fears of taking, you know, that first step and getting into the market and deciding to buy their first home? And if you can go right back to basics and take on what is the number one fear that buyers and sellers have, which is fear of the unknown. Okay, if you can have that at the back of your mind and go, okay, so what questions would I be asking as a first-time buyer? What would I want to know that I have to do as part of the process towards buying a property? Okay, and if you start at that level, I believe, with again a whole lot of love and respect, if you start to take that starting point, if you like, for a first-time buyer and talk them through the entire journey, even if you're talking about stuff that isn't your expertise. So, for example, you know, removals, you might be a conveyancer and you want to talk about removals. Well, you can touch on removals as a subject, but then maybe get a subject matter expert in, like a removals expert, to talk about the practicalities of removals and what they need to know. Okay, so you're building that content, and then when a client contacts you, they're not just getting a price for a job that they perceive is all the same from different providers of the same service. What they're actually getting is a snapshot to your expertise, and more importantly, as I say, start to build that relationship with you online. So it's really, really crucial that you sort of take this on and embrace it, and as I say, go right back to very, very basics. And I'm going to encourage you to start doing that, and then getting your content across to different sites, whether that's you post the videos on YouTube. YouTube have made the process so simple to upload videos and content online. And the thing that I think stops a lot of people, just whilst we're on this subject, is the need to be perfect. Okay, particularly if you're in the legal profession and you kind of have that pressure, if you like, peer pressure, that the stuff that you're putting out online needs to be perfect. I can tell you categorically, as you've probably seen from some of the stuff that we put out every week, that these videos are not in any way, shape, or form perfect. But the point is, I like to think they're real and they're authentic, and we're doing this as a service to the wider community and people to help them on their moving journey. Okay, so as I say, YouTube have made this process incredibly simple to put stuff online, and you can get started for not a lot of money. Most people have a smartphone right now, so you can record some content and just start to get it out there and start to post it, and people will naturally be able to find you. I am going to suggest as well that you do get your content onto WiggyWam. We are seeing, interestingly, the people that join us and that start to share their content on our site are getting multiplied orders of magnitude more views and more engagement with their content than they are on their own individual sites. And that is because we've spent some time curating an audience that are welcoming the updates that we share with them every week, and that are going to the site and they are browsing and reading articles that are online, and they're watching videos that are online there as well. And I just think it's a great thing to see, because one of the most disheartening things that you can do is to put content out there online and not have any engagement, or not have any kind of interactions, or not have any views of it all. And that's why people give up. For us, we're fortunate that we have this platform that we can just start to post content on. And some of these videos, we started off with getting tens of views and that sort of thing, and then all of a sudden we're into the hundreds of views, and now recently getting videos into the thousands of views, which is fantastic, because it obviously means somebody's spending some time, hopefully more than one person is spending some time on these videos, watching them, consuming that content, and beginning to know, like, and trust us. And as a result, after 23 weeks of doing this, we're starting to reach that tipping point where more inbound inquiries are coming in to us as a result of that, which is fantastic. And as I say, I'm not saying this to blow our own trumpet or tell you how good we are. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm trying to give you guys encouragement to not only just start this thing and do some social media marketing, but actually to take it seriously and do it week in, week out, and commit to it. And the time and effort that's involved in doing these sorts of videos, I would probably say it's about 6 to 8 hours a week in order to curate the content and all the questions coming in, and then to organize them in some kind of a semblance of order, and then to prepare the presentation that we're doing here today, then edit it, and then upload that onto YouTube, do all the different covers for the videos and all the rest of it. All fairly simple stuff, but it's stuff that we've had to learn, and we've evolved over the course of the last few weeks and months. And interestingly, we're starting to see much bigger engagement on platforms like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, et cetera, and that continues to build, and it does through more and more consistency. So I know I'm not a lone voice in the industry in trying to encourage you all to take this on and really take it seriously and do it. I really believe that the people that do this and that take this on and are serious about it will be the winners over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. I do see the market getting tougher. I do see it getting harder to grab people's attention and to keep people's attention, more importantly. And as a consequence, the more content that you have out there online that is useful, and it's not just telling everybody how good you are, but it's useful content. It guides people through a process. It helps them achieve their goals. Those people are going to be the big winners over the course of the next couple of years. So we're here to help you guys. If there's something that you think we can do to help and support you, if you just want to get your stuff online with us, if you're writing blogs and you want to share those with us, or vlogs, or any kind of other content that you want to put up there, we'd be happy to give you a test run of it, and then see what engagement you get, see what feedback you're getting on it, and if you like it, obviously do more, which would be fantastic. So hope that helps, guys. Just wanted to kick that off. And really sort of drive home the fact that your clients need a lot more help than you think they do. And I think it's important to embrace that as the market gets tougher, if you want to be one of the big winners over the course of the next couple of years. So anyway, thanks for listening to me on that point. I'm just going to kick off now with the questions that we've had in this week. So our first question is coming in from Amika. I hope I'm saying that right. Hi there, Amika. Thank you for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. So Amika's question is, I received a message from Nationwide that the mortgage valuation is booked for next week. Does that mean the eligibility check, credit check, and other checks have been done? And have I passed? Is the valuation the last stage? And if everything goes well with the valuation, does it mean I can expect an offer on next week? What stage am I at now? I'm a little bit nervous. All right. Well, thank you for the question, Amika. Sorry, I tripped over the word eligibility, but it's great that you've raised this question, and I'm pleased to hear that you've got your mortgage valuation booked in, because that is an exciting step, purely and simply because you're right in what you're suggesting is that it does usually mean that you've passed most of the sort of credit checks and the initial sort of information gathering process that somebody like Nationwide would do initially to get you to this stage of a mortgage valuation. Now, the point of the valuation is to ensure that the a price that you've agreed to pay for the property is exactly what the property is worth. And if it isn't, what you can expect is that the value will come back and say, you know what, actually, I don't think it's worth this much. I think it's actually worth less. And sometimes that comes back as a disappointment. But one of the things to bear in mind is that actually it can be a really good thing, because it means that you're not overpaying for a property that if you then had to try and sell it in the future, you'd end up losing money on. Okay, so that's a very, very important point to square away. Second thing I want to say just on that is that it's important not to confuse a mortgage valuation with what we call a traditional survey. And just to give you a little bit of background knowledge on that, all the value is going to do, and depending upon how much you're looking to borrow, the valuer will turn up at the property, check that it has 4 walls and a roof, and pretty much, mark it down as yes, it's worth this much, or no, it's not. They won't actually look at the more in-depth aspects of the property, such as whether or not there's any damp in the property. I mean, if there's major issues that are immediately obvious, they might get a mention, and the valuer might put a retention against the property, which means that they will only release a certain amount of money, and then they'll hold some back until you've actually got that work item repaired. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. But they're not going to look at a lot of the more in-depth issues that the property might have. And if you wanted something a little bit more in depth, you would then look at getting maybe a home buyer's report or a building survey done on the property, depending upon how old it is and all the rest of it. So that's a really, really good step that you've got to. The other thing I'll say is that once the valuation has come back, and assuming that it's all okay, is that then the Nationwide in this instance will then proceed to issue the formal mortgage offer. Okay, and that will be a document that will be sent through to you and also to your solicitor. And it's important that you really check that in depth and make sure that it is accurate and all the information that's recorded on there is accurate, because if there are things that aren't accurate, it means that there will be delays in getting that offer reissued. I actually had this happen many, many years ago on a property. I think it was like 2009 or something. And there was a misspelling of my middle name, and it was one letter was wrong. It was an O instead of an A. And as a consequence, they had to then reissue all 3 offers. And what they then said was that I'd failed their internal credit scoring policy, which was a bit odd because I was still the same person and still all the details were exactly the same. So quite what went on there, I do not know, but it all got resolved and everything was issued within, I think it was about 2 weeks or something. But the point is, it caused a delay that was unnecessary. So I really encourage you to check that through. In terms of the stage that you're at, Amika, just to clarify this a little bit further, is that you have got, you will have the mortgage valuation back. You will hopefully then have the mortgage offer back, the formal mortgage offer, but there will still be likely to be legal work that will be taking place in the background, whether there are any inquiries that are outstanding that your solicitors raised that will then need to go and get answers to those inquiries, or whether there's any part of your searches that are still outstanding. That is something to check and clarify with your solicitor. But hopefully you're in a position where they've got everything that they need, and the only thing they're waiting for is that mortgage offer to then go towards an exchange of contracts. Final thing to mention, Amika, is it obviously depends upon, and this is not something you've mentioned in your question, but it obviously depends upon how many other people are in the chain. Okay, so if the people that you're buying off is there another property above that they're buying and another property above that, if there are other people in the chain, potentially there can be issues in terms of delays caused by other people that stop you from getting the hands on the keys to your new home as quickly as you would like. But let's hope that this is a nice short chain. It's nice and quick and easy, and you'll be able to get your keys ASAP, which will be fantastic. So I wish you the best of luck with that, Amika. I hope that's given you the information that you need there. If there's anything else that we can do to help you, then please do let me know, and I'd be delighted to answer any more questions. All right, Amika, good luck. And moving on, question number 2 comes in from Tommy. Hi there, Tommy. Thank you for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. So Tommy's question is, we had an offer on our property back in September 2022, which was $15,000 over the asking price, and we accepted. Our offer was also accepted for the place we were buying. Our buyer pulled out just before Christmas, and we have since had two other offers, which are both below the asking price, one by 15,000 and the other by 20,000. The people we are buying off said they'd move out to speed up the sale. However, we can no longer afford their property and wondered if it would be okay to ask them to take about 20 grand off the price we agreed. Given we'd effectively be losing around 30,000 based on what we offered last year, and our original offer to them was based on that figure. Sorry, what we were offered last year, and our original offer was based on that figure. Okay, well, thank you for the question, Tommy. I think this is an unfortunate sign of the times and the general sort of nervousness that's filtering into the marketplace right now after a very hectic market over the course of the last 2 years. And I think we're starting to see that cooling off in the market really starting to come to the fore with situations like this. And it may well be that, you know, your buyer, I'm going to presume that your buyer got spooked by the sort of mini budget scenario and then the escalating the cost of finance, and as a consequence they decided maybe it isn't worth it, or maybe it's not, you know, the right time to buy, or maybe there was other things that went on in the background. But clearly it's put you in a difficult position. If you want to accept this lower offer of 15,000 below your asking, you're quite right in what you're saying. There's a 30 grand difference there. In my experience, having dealt with situations like this before, Tommy, the only thing you can do really is to ask the question whether or not the people that you're buying off would be prepared to accept a lesser offer, whether they will capitulate in any way on the price that you've already agreed. And what I'm going to encourage you to do, and what it might pay you to do, Tommy, is to actually get your estate agent, which I'm assuming you're using an estate agent, but to actually go and get the estate agent to speak to the agent of the people that you're buying off, or actually speak to them directly. And the reason I suggest that is because it's a little bit more, how do I say, credible, for want of a better word. And that's not to say we doubt your word here, Tommy. That's not what it's about at all. But you've got an independent third party stepping into your shoes who hopefully can negotiate this deal through and will be able to sort of explain what's actually gone on. Now, it may well be if the other agent that you're buying through is in the same sort of area, they may well be, you know, experiencing similar sort of things happening with their properties as well. So it might be easier for them to convey to their client that actually, you know, the market is cooling off a little bit. Prices are, you know, pulling back a little bit, and you know, it's one of these situations that you know, needs to be addressed really. So you can ask that question. You haven't said to me, Tommy, in the question, what sort of scale we're talking at in terms of property. Obviously, 20 grand reduction on £100,000 property is, you know, a lot more impactful than a 20 grand reduction on a £2 million property. So I'm going to presume you're sort of probably in the sort of 200 to 300 bracket, maybe a little bit more here. But I would just ask the question, explain the situation, and they are then in a position where they have to make a decision. Now, the key point to emphasize, which hopefully your estate agent will emphasize as well, is your buyers are now, the people you're buying off are now in a position where they have to make a judgment call. Do they take the lower offer now and achieve certainty of sale and get the money in the bank, and you know, hopefully they're then in a position where they can buy better because they're a cash buyer, okay, and in a position to proceed really quickly? Or do they run the risk of actually saying no to you and then putting the property back on the market in what could be a falling market or a cooler market, and they may then run the risk of actually getting a lesser offer than what you've put on the table right now? That's the sort of buyers and sellers psychology when markets start to change like this. And as I say, there's no guarantee that they're going to get the same offer or better than what you've put on the table. And if they're then in a position where they're cash buyers, they are in rented accommodation, then they may get a much better deal on the one that they want to buy at some point in the future. So it really is a sort of a question that they've got to ask themselves, and something they've got to wrestle with within their own consciousness, and whether or not they are you know, almost, I suppose, gamblers in some respects. You know, what's better, rolling the dice and taking that gamble, or is, you know, a bird in the hand better than two in the bush, as they say? Something to think about there. So I would yeah, definitely get your agent to push it forward, see what happens. And then what you might find is, you decide to put your house back up for sale, and they put their house back up for sale, and you might get another person walk through the door who might offer you less than 10 grand less than your asking price, or maybe even the asking price. You just don't know. But my view was always, when I was an estate agent, if you can try and keep the deal together and you can try and massage everything to make it work, even if they came down 10 grand, does that kind of help balance the equation and make it work for everybody? I don't know. These are the sorts of things you've got to kick around with the estate agent. But if you, are open to a solution presenting itself, that's the route that I would go down. All right, Tommy. So hope that works. Let me know how you got on. Hope I've got my fingers crossed for you. Hope it all pans out okay. And if you need any more help on that at all, then please do let me know. All right. Fantastic. All right, question number 3 comes in from Anna here. Hi there, Anna. Thank you for your question and for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. So Anna says, our flat has been on the market since April last year, and we are still no closer to selling. Buyer pulled out a few months back. The flat is above a newsagent's and on a busy main road. We've already reduced the asking price on the advice of the agent, but still no interest. Someone suggested it would be good. It would be a good buy for a buy-to-let, given there is a university close by. How do we find buy-to-let investors? I am guessing they don't use Rightmove, where our property is listed. The other option suggested was the auction route, but I was told I could end up not selling there either and be landed with huge fees even if I don't sell. All right, Anna, well, thank you for your question, and sorry to hear of your situation there. It is a bit of a tricky one, as I was just explaining in the last question, that this changing market is causing properties to stick a little bit, or more importantly, causing buyers to be a little bit more cautious, nervous and reserved about stepping forward to buy properties because, well, first of all, there's the risk of whether or not people have got employment. That's the first one I think that people are nervous about. Secondly, it's the cost of everything, which seems to be going up right now. So not just cost of food and cost of fuel and cost of heating your home, but also cost of finance, et cetera, et cetera. And thirdly, there's obviously the nervousness of whether or not this adverse impact on the market is going to cause prices to retract. And so, there is a lot of uncertainty. So I can understand, the situation that you're in is not a pleasant one because you just want this property sold. So first thing I'm going to say to Anna is there, or the first question I'm going to ask you is there a for sale board in place? If this property is on a busy main road, it's important to get those extra eyeballs looking in the direction of your property. Sometimes people don't put a for sale board up because they get worried that, some people might think it's the entirety of the newsagents and the flat above, etc. But if there's some way where you can get a for sale board up there, then it's definitely going to help, I think, in terms of attracting potentially more interest initially, which is what you need in order to convert that interest into a potential buyer. So that would be the first thing I'd look at. Second thing I'd also consider is whether or not to go down a joint agency route, i.e. have 2 estate agents working side by side trying to sell the property, or even multi-agency where you have potentially 3 or more agents looking to try and sell it. The slight disadvantage is that your cost base will likely increase, but that's no bad thing if it gets the property sold, which will be my view. And so for the extra, let's say, £1,000 to £2,000 you might end up spending by going multi-agency or joint agency, I would suggest it's well worth it because you're then in a position where you're actually getting the property sold, which is most important, right? Third thing I would suggest is to check out local property networking groups in your area and see what you can do in terms of putting this property in front of them. Now, whether that is actually going to one of the meetings and attending it, or whether they have a private, they might have a private social media group where you can post properties on and that sort of thing, or get somebody within the group to post it on there for you. That may generate some interest, but depending upon the nature of the investment group and the people that are there, they may actually want to buy at a discount. So you might have to factor that in. How deep that discount will be, again, is open to inquiry, I suppose, depending upon as I say, the nature of the investors that you've got in that room and whether or not they, see value in acquiring that property in its current location, or whether they can, dare I say it, Anna, sense a bit of desperation and will therefore knock you down on the price. So that's just something to be aware of when you're sort of exposing the properties to that sort of an environment. And that's not to pick holes in property investors at all. It's just the way property investors run their business. It's, they want to buy the best property they can for as cheap as they can, because, it works much better on the rental figures. So, why wouldn't you? That sort of thing. The other thing I would suggest you look at, Anna, with this one is actually go and talk to the newsagent themselves and any other shops in the row, as to see whether or not they might be interested in buying the property. I know it seems a little bit more proactive, and you've got an agent on board, and perhaps the agent should be doing this. I'm not going to dispute that, but the point is, if you want the property sold and you want the cash in the bank, then there's certainly some rewards to be claimed by actually going out there and doing some of the work yourself. So go and talk to the local shop owners, go and talk to the newsagents, and see if that's something that they might be interested in buying. You never know; they might just go, "Well, actually, I didn't know it was for sale. Yeah, I'd love to buy it because, I'm commuting, too much each week, and I'd rather actually live above my shop, so I know everything's safe and secure." That could be exactly what they need. All right, so go and have a chat with them, and then, just to pick up on the last point that you mentioned about going down the auction route, I would actually go and talk to a couple of auctioneers, invite them in for a conversation, or pick up the phone and have that conversation and see how they operate, because some will charge you based on putting the auction pack together and putting the property into auction. But if it doesn't sell, they will then put it into future auctions free of charge, okay, in order to help you to sell the property. So they operate very differently. The likelihood is they will start with a very low guide price, which might be a lot less than you were actually hoping for. And you might sit there thinking, oh, actually, the property's on the market for 120,000, they're advertising at 40,000. But the point is, it's a marketing exercise to attract as many people as possible across the threshold, okay? So if somebody sees that and thinks, well, I know it's worth 120,000, but it's being advertised at 40,000. It's got to be a bargain. I'm going to buy it, as is 100 other people. And then you get a ton of people in the room, hopefully bidding on that property. And the auctioneer will use the momentum in the room of the bidding to drive the price up, which is exactly what you want. You will be able to set a reserve price, of course, in the auction, which will hopefully prevent it from selling at less than that figure. So you get to determine what that is likely to be. But it all depends on the equity, I suppose, that you've got in this property and how desperate you are to sort of get your hands on that money as to which route you decide to go down. The other final point that I've just thought of, Anna, here is whether or not you might actually be interested in becoming a buy-to-let landlord yourself. Whether this exercise might work out better for you to maybe do a refinancing exercise to pull a chunk of cash out of the property and then become a landlord, rent the property out, and you've got an income then as well as an asset that will hopefully hopefully appreciate over time. That might be something well worth thinking about, because it could open another door for you in that regard. So have a little think, explore some options there, Anna. There's plenty to go at here, I think, with this property. It might feel a little bit like you're losing hope, but please don't, because I think you've got a number of options to explore there. And hopefully, as we start to get out of this colder weather period, we're coming out of winter. I mean, January's traditionally not a great time for selling, let's be honest. But hopefully, as the market starts to get a little bit better and the weather picks up a little bit, it might be the right time for you to sell. And it might be the right time then for a buyer to come through the door and give you what you want. Okay, so wishing you the best of luck with that, Anna. Hope it all goes well. Let us know if there's anything else that we can do to help you, and good luck. Moving on, question number 4 comes in from Stella. Hi there, Stella. Thank you for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community and for submitting your question. So Stella asks, is it safe to rent a property off Facebook Marketplace? I don't use it myself, but my daughter is looking to rent a flat. She said there are loads on there and they are much less rent than those advertised on other sites in the same area. I'm concerned because I've read stories of people being scammed where the scammer rents an Airbnb property for a few days, then shows people around and takes a deposit, then disappears. I can't imagine Facebook carry out any checks on the people posting on there to ensure they are who they claim to be. All right, Sally, well, thank you for your question. In my humble opinion, I think perfectly valid to have some of those concerns. And I do believe, if I was in a similar position, I would definitely be treading very carefully based on the sort of horror stories that you've mentioned and that I've also read about. Essentially, what I think some of these scammers do, exactly as you say, they rent the property for a short period under Airbnb or whatever it might be. And then you or two or three others or maybe more will turn up and they'll say, yeah, if you want this property because we're advertising it so cheaply, it's going to rent today, give me a deposit, you give them some cash, they clear off, and you're never going to see them again. It's very unethical, obviously, and it's certainly not something you want to get yourself caught up in. But I would tread incredibly carefully here, and I'm not saying that you can't trust Facebook Marketplace. That's not what I'm saying. It's the actual people that are advertising these properties on there. And are they the real deal? So what I'm going to suggest is if it's an agent that's put the property on the site there, actually go and have a chat with them, go and meet them. Hopefully they've got a high street office or something of that nature where you can actually go and meet them, talk to them, make sure that their business is legitimate, that they've been around for a while. And this is just another string to their bow in terms of exposing properties to a wider marketplace rather than putting them on the traditional portals. But I would also do a little bit more digging. Go to the property if you are really tempted because it looks like a really good deal. Go there and have your absolute wits about you. Talk to the owner, suss them out, ask them, should we say, probing questions. How long have you owned the property for? Blah, blah, blah. When was the last time you rented it out? Just trying to dig deeper. Have they got a copy of the gas safety certificate, for example? That's a good one to ask. Can you show me a copy of the EPC? Can you show me a copy of the tenancy agreement? All of that information, if they're a reliable landlord or an agency that's advertising it on behalf of a landlord, that information should be readily available. And if it's not, and if the owner starts stuttering or the alleged owner starts stuttering and starts to look as though they've got something to hide, it would be well advised to walk away. One of the things you can do, Stella, which might be a bit extreme, but it could save you, falling foul of one of these scams, is that you can go to Land Registry as a site, and for I think it's about £4 now, you can download a copy of the title deeds for the property in question. So let's say, for example, you found a property on there that you like the look of, you might have a little bit of concern. Just to put all that doubt out of your mind, grab a copy of the title deeds, then go and see the property with the title deeds in your back pocket and talk to the person that's showing you around. If it's the alleged owner, ask them their name. Does that name correspond with the name that's on the title deeds? If it doesn't, obviously you're going to start digging a little bit deeper and saying, well, okay, so the title deeds are in the name of so-and-so. And watch their reaction. Are they going to start to get very defensive? Are they going to start stuttering and making up some cock and bull story about it? Oh, it's a friend of a friend who's helping me out and blah, blah, blah. What is it going to be? I don't know. But the point is, if they're getting flustered and they're starting to think on their feet, and because you've caught them out, walk away. And it's better to have lost £4 than it is to lose 500 plus on a total scam, which it could be, especially if they're taking a month's rent and your deposit up front of 5 weeks or whatever it might be. So yeah, something to be very, very cautious of here, Stella. Interestingly, I will tell you a little story that happened to us, and this is probably going back about 6-7 months ago now, before we moved into the property that we're in right now. We were actually looking around for a rental property, and I was just looking everywhere, just using my sort of property investor experience to look everywhere to try and find the right property for us. And we found a place on, I think it was Gumtree at the time, and it was one of these that had, it was clearly somebody trying to do something private on Gumtree. And I thought, well, let's go and check it out, because we're pretty desperate. There's not a lot on the rental market at the moment. So we went to turn up to see this house in a really nice area. And not that I want to judge here, Stella, so I hope you'll get what I'm saying here. But when we turned up to view, there was a couple walking down the drive, and he had got all sorts of tattoos all over his face, and didn't look like the kind of person I'd want to bump into in a dark alley on a rainy night. You know what I mean? And anyway, we sort of got there, started chatting, and she actually said to us, "You guys are a bit of a breath of fresh air." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean, if you don't mind me asking?" And she said, "You would not believe some of the people that we've had in to look at this property." And what had happened is the agent that was handling it was actually from out of the area and was helping her friend rent out the property and find the right sort of tenant. And what they'd had in these sort of situations was people turning up, like the friend I've just mentioned, who was offering 12 months rent up front in cash, as long as they didn't go around the property ever and check it out. So you can probably guess what they were going to use the property for. Some kind of horticultural activity, if you need a bit of a clue as to what was actually going on there. But this sort of thing was apparently becoming more and more commonplace, particularly with private adverts, is that you get people turning up and they hand over a big bag of cash and they say, you don't turn up to this property until we've left. So have to tread a little bit carefully in these sorts of environments. That one ultimately wasn't for us. Unfortunately, we found another property through an agent in town, but it's not. I'm not adverse to exploring these other avenues, whether that's eBay or, as I say, Gumtree, or I haven't tried Facebook Marketplace personally, because when we searched there, they didn't have anything in their area. But I would certainly tread carefully, and I'd want to go with my gut feel as to whether or not I thought this somebody was trying to pull a scam on me. If they're not asking for references, if they're not asking for the sort of background checks that ordinarily a landlord or an agent would be asking for, then I'd be very tempted to walk away, Stella. So don't let the idea of missing out on a deal that's too good to be true get in the way of actually keeping your hands on your hard-earned cash. I think that's probably the summary I'll leave you with, Stella. But I hope that helps. Let me know if there's anything else we can do to help and support you. And I wish you all the best of luck in finding your daughter a lovely property to live in. Okay, so we're cracking on really, really well today, guys. Thank you for your time, care, and attention. Question number 5 comes in here from Anthony. Hi there, Anthony. Thank you for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community and for submitting your question here. Anthony says, we remortgaged to release some money to build an extension last October. We found a local builder on mybuilder.com who had loads of great reviews. He started off okay and was getting on with the work. He hired others to work with him, and to date we've paid him $110,000, which we paid in phases. That isn't the whole amount, though. We agreed, as still there is £30,000 outstanding. He was supposed to buy materials with the last $40,000 we gave him, but he's not been back and won't answer our calls. I've since found out he hasn't paid any of the contractors. We visited his home address 3 times now, but got no answer. We got chatting to a neighbor who said he'd been trading under a different company name a year or so ago, which he folded and started a new one not long after. We are panicking now that he's going to do the same again, and we won't be able to claim against him. He has also since closed his MyBuilder account. Is there anything we can do legally or otherwise? We are both so distraught. Anthony, I'm really sorry to hear that, my friend. I get so frustrated in these sorts of situations, Anthony. I can't begin to tell you. And it always seems to be a template situation that unfolds here, Anthony, where builders start work, or they won't start work until you've given them some money up front to go and buy materials, and then you never see them again because they've run off with your cash. And obviously this is not against all builders, so please don't send me loads of messages saying you said this about all builders. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when things go wrong with builders, it tends to be the same sort of template that unfolds. And so my number one golden rule on anything to do with building or development is to never pay money up front for these sorts of situations, as I'm sure you begin to understand, Anthony. And if you have to pay for materials, you get the builder to place the order, you phone up and you make the payment for the materials, and you get the materials delivered to your site so that they're your materials and you own them, and you have the right of claim and ownership of those materials. They're not going through an unknown third party. And obviously in these sorts of situations, you always want to be paying in arrears to a builder and his team doing the work for you, rather than necessarily paying in advance on different stages. So it's good that you've been doing it in phases, but the situation that you've just outlined sounds as though it is going in certainly the wrong direction. The thing you haven't mentioned, and I'm going to have to make an assumption here, Anthony, but the thing you haven't mentioned is that I'm assuming that the builder has been trading under a limited company name rather than a sole trader. Now, if it's a sole tradership that he's been running under, and he owns his own house, then there is certainly a possibility that you could ask a solicitor to record a legal charge against his title deeds for the money that is outstanding that he owes you. Okay, that's a bit of an extreme measure, but the thing is, it might not do you any good initially, but he can never then sell that property without asking you to discharge the charge, and that only comes with him paying up at least some of the money that has gone missing. Let's put it that way. So that's what I would look at. If it's in a limited company, though, everything becomes a lot more difficult, and this is the sort of trick that unfortunately these builders get into, is that they set up this limited company, they start trading through it, and then when things go wrong, they collapse the company, and there's nothing you can do about it. The key point being here is that there should be assets within that business, such as the tools, such as the van, etc. Not to the extent of the money that you've paid over, but there would still be materials. There will still be assets within the business that you would have a claim on, because you are technically a creditor to his limited company. So there is a possibility you could go down the route of being a claimant against his company. You may be able to also apply to have him struck off as a director if he's done this multiple times. In my experience, again, that doesn't really stop these sorts of people, because they will just put a friend or a family member in place as a director, and then just start the same game again. It is unfortunate, because there needs to be more checks and balances in place to stop this sort of thing from happening. And the only check and balance that I found so far is, as I mentioned right at the very start, you've got to keep really tight control of your cash, and the only way you can do that is by you ordering the materials and getting everything delivered to site. So the routes that you'd probably have available to you, if I'm honest, Anthony, would be reporting this to the local police, who, again, with a whole lot of love and respect, probably aren't going to do anything with this. I'd certainly report it to road traders or programs of that nature to see if you can get them to take any action or expose this guy for what he's actually done. And if he's done it previously, and there will be contractors or subcontractors that haven't been paid, will probably also want to get involved with that as well. The other thing that you might want to consider, and I hate doing this, but sometimes in these sorts of situations it needs to be done, and that's to publicly name and shame the individual because of the dodgy business practices that they're doing, and make that publicly known so that other people don't fall foul of the same trap. It's not a nice thing to do, obviously, but where you're at, it's an unfortunate position, and I feel really anxious for you, Anthony, that I can't give you more of a sort of concrete route to go down, if you'll pardon the pun, as to how you can kind of get this issue resolved. The problem is, once that cash has been handed over, you've then got the recovery process to go through, whether that's appointing an insolvency practitioner. You could potentially appoint a solicitor to go and chase it for you, but the likelihood is you're just going to end up spending more and more money chasing after this, when it's actually going to not bring you any kind of return. And the likelihood of any criminal charges being brought against this guy is also very, very remote, which is why programs like Road Traders exist, etc. We are in the background within WiggyWam. We're actually trying to launch an initiative which is working directly with the various trade bodies to get real-time data about their members integrated into our site. And the point of doing that is to actually prevent things like this happening, or at least try and limit the impact of things like this happening. Whereas if a tradesperson doesn't renew their membership with that trade body, that would flag up on their profile immediately as a warning to other people that actually maybe this isn't the right person to approach for the work that you want carried out. And it's something, because we're hearing these sorts of horror stories, Anthony, going on. It's something that we passionately believe needs to be done in order to prevent this sort of thing from unfolding. I'm just wondering if there is anything else that you could do, or whether actually anybody within the WiggyWam community who is watching this video, whether or not they've got any ideas or suggestions on how to recover this cash. That probably doesn't involve sending the boys round, which I'm not going to advocate, of course, because that's not something we can, as professionals, advocate. And I certainly wouldn't suggest that you do that, because you'll end up in more trouble than I think it's worth. But it is one to put down to significant experience. It's a shame, because it ruins people sometimes in these sorts of situations. It's a big chunk of money to buy. I would hope, if this is something that's being done in arrears, Anthony, that your actual loss isn't going to be the full 40,000. It's actually going to be the sum for the materials, which I would hope is, let's say, 10 grand. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So it might be one of these that you've just got to take on the chin and put it down to experience and go, what were we thinking? I wish we'd never done that. We kick ourselves, just as I kicked myself because of backing my good lady's car into the house last week, because it was a totally stupid thing to do. Why did I do it? I don't know. I shouldn't have done it, but it happened. And I have to learn to live with that. And obviously the financial costs of putting it right. In your instance, as I say, I'm hoping that there's only a small percentage of that is actually the cost of the materials, and the rest of it is paying for work that's already been done. So hopefully it's a limit on the loss that you've made there. And if there's 30 grand of work about standing, then maybe there's an opportunity to work with some of the subbies that have been on the site previously to ensure that they're paid directly by you to finish off the work that needs to be done, or whether or not you have to employ other individuals to come in and do the work. And it might slow down your progress, because you might have to pay some out of cash flow and some out of capital, as in, you've got an income coming in, I would hope, from your work, and then you can use that to pay certain stages of the work. So break it down into much smaller packages of work. And then, let's say, for example, you pay for a plasterer to come in, and you pay for a stage of them to put the plasterboard up in certain rooms. And it might be that you pay for them to put the ceilings up, and then you pay for them to dot and dab the walls, and then you pay for them to plaster each individual room that you've had done. It might take several weeks longer, but the point is, at least the project will be done, and it won't hinder you as much as it would do, from the loss that you've incurred here. So I am sorry you're in that position, Anthony. My heart goes out to you. I had, and I might have mentioned this on a previous video that we did, but as you're new to our community, Anthony, I will mention it anyway. I had this situation. Thankfully, I haven't had too many, but I had it with a guy who was a plumber who tried to stitch me up on a job, and he sent a quote, and I think it was like 3.5 grand. He said that's the full quote for the work, right? And I rang him up. I said, so this is including the boiler, the pipe work, the fitting, the hanging of the radiators, connecting everything up, checking this. So he's like, yeah, everything's all included. I said, okay, fine. So he then agreed to start. And after 5 days of doing work, he sent me an invoice for £3,500. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Because, you quoted me 3.5 grand for the entire job, and now you've done a week's worth of work, and you're suggesting that actually this is the total value of the job. And he said, oh, no, don't be ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. Of course, it's not 3.5 grand. That's just the first stage of the work. And I said, well, we'll end our relationship there then. You are not to turn up on site anymore. And thankfully, he brought a load of fittings and pipe work and all the rest of it to the property. And, they were now in my property. So they were, as far as I was concerned, my property, rightly or wrongly. And as a consequence, one of the things he'd also done, I'd asked him whether or not he knew where to drill the floor joists that were in the property, because structurally they needed to be drilled in a certain point, or holes formed in a certain place on the floor joist, otherwise it could affect the structural integrity of those joists. And lo and behold, he drilled them in completely the wrong place, despite telling me that he knew exactly what he was doing. So we ended up having to get a structural engineer out there just to double check, and thankfully everything was okay. But the point is, I think after a week's worth of work and all the connections and everything that he put in there, and the hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of pipe work that was in the property, he then instructed his solicitor. I explained everything to the solicitor. I explained to them exactly what had gone on, and we settled on £100, which was the amount that I paid them for the work that had been done, minus all of my other costs and the messing about and everything else as well. So I came out of that situation much better off than I think most other people would. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't like that confrontation. I don't like that confrontation, but I am going to stand my ground when I think somebody's trying to have, trying to fleece me. Let's put it that way. So I wish you the best of luck, Anthony. I really hope you can get this resolved. And it's a start warning to any other party that's listening to this or watching this as part of the WiggyWam community, that you have to be so careful when you're managing these relationships, when you're having building work done. I do like to think that most people have their hearts in the right place, and they do try and do a good job. And sometimes things run against you in life. I've had it myself. I've experienced that, where things run against you, and with the best will in the world, you can be as moral and ethical as you like, but when things run against you, there's not a lot that you can do. But if somebody's got a pattern of doing this, and they've done it over and over and over again, it's time that person is kind of held to account and exposed for their wrongdoing. So good luck. Anything else we can do, Anthony, let me know by all means. And if you want to put a warning onto the WiggyWam community about this type of person and their behavior, feel free to do so. We'll fully support you in that. All right. Good luck. And I say, let us know what else we can do to help. All right, moving on. Question number 6 comes in from Will. Hi there, Will. Thank you for your question and for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. So Will says, I'm a first-time buyer and I put an offer in on a property that I fell in love with. I just received a comprehensive surveyor's report in which it says the roof needs to be redone soonish and the wiring needs to be redone, etc. My question is the surveyor mentioning these things to cover himself, or does this work really have to be done? All right, well, thank you for your question. Nice and concise there with what's happened for you. You haven't mentioned exactly what type of report you've had done here, Will, but I'm going to assume that it's something like a home buyer's report or a building survey. It's perhaps a little bit, you said it's comprehensive, so I'm going to assume that it's something of that ilk. One of the things I'm going to encourage you to do, Will, is to step back from this and just read that report very sort of methodically and carefully to try and understand exactly what's being said by the surveyor. And the reason I'm saying this is, first of all, it's educational, but secondly, if it is a comprehensive report like you've just mentioned, it can seem like you're being asked to spend an awful lot of money on the property based on the surveyor's suggestions. But actually, once you read it again at a greater detail, you might realize that it's not as bad as you first thought. And I've had this many times where property investor friends have said, "Oh, Silas, you're a surveyor. I've just had this survey done. I think the house is falling down." I said, "Well, send me the report." And I read through the report, and there's a lot of caveats, as you've sort of touched on here, Will. But actually, the property, in my opinion, was absolutely fine. And there was some recommendations that were being made about things to budget for during the future life expectancy of the property. And I'm going to again draw some assumptions here, and I could be incorrect, so correct me if I am wrong here, Will. But if the property, unless the property is completely derelict or falling down, which it's unlikely to be, because then first of all, I'm going to suggest as a first-time buyer you wouldn't be buying a property like that, and secondly, if you were, you've probably got a little bit of nous about you that you've maybe had some experience of doing up properties before, or you've got family members who are going to go on this journey with you and help you. So unless, as I say, it's completely derelict or there's severe roof movement or there's major problems, such as roof spread, which is exactly as it suggests, the roof is starting to spread for whatever reason, it's very unlikely, I would suggest, that the roof needs wholesale replacement. I would suggest that's not the case. Read that report. Is it things like the surveyor suggesting some of the lead work needs to be redone, such as in a valley gutter? Maybe there's some lead work there that's starting to look like it needs replacement. Is there any lead work around joints in the roof, such as where a chimney comes through the roof and there's lead work around there? Does that need replacing? Or has the surveyor suggested that actually the life expectancy of the roof covering, let's say it's slate, for example, maybe 10 years. It might have 10 years remaining, and you should then budget for replacement of the roof covering within the next sort of 5 to 10 years. That might be actually what's being suggested, and I would suggest having a reread will clarify things in your mind. You start to realize, oh, okay, I don't need to whip off the entire roof and replace it, which would be enormously expensive. I only need to look at maybe doing this in the future, that there would be a budget made for that, which might, and listen carefully here, Will, because this is something you might want to take on board. If the surveyors suggested that there will be significant costs to be spent on this, that it might be a case of going back to the agent who's selling the property and renegotiating the purchase price to take into account the work that's been identified on the survey report. Okay, that's something to think about. Again, things like the wiring, it may not be a wholesale replacement of the wiring. It might be an update of the wiring, such as replacement of the consumer unit or the fuse board as it used to be known. If that's outdated and the surveyor thinks, actually that needs to be replaced, that might be a £500 to £1,000 job as compared to a rewire, which might be a £5,000 to £10,000 job, depending upon the size of the house. You know what I mean? So just have a reread and a reflection on what's actually being said in the report. As I say, sometimes people get so scared and put off by these books. By these reports. Some of them do look like books, to be honest. Some of them I've seen. I think probably the best surveyor's report I ever saw was a surveyor looked at this thatched cottage in the country. It was like part 1600s and part 1500s. Beautiful, beautiful house in the country. But this guy, I think he spent something like 8 hours at the property inspecting it. He was an absolute perfectionist, and the report came back like this. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, I'm shocked at the size of that report. But he got into all sorts of detail, and in the end, he gives the property a clean bill of health. But what a mountain of information as a buyer for that type of property to have at your disposal to, program in the kind of work that maybe needs to be done in the future, and to, make allowances in your budget and your planning for actually what needs to be done to keep that property in tip-top condition. Okay, so hope that helps, Will. As I say, if you want to send me the report, I'll happily look it over for you. I'll happily go into a little bit more detail, and we can have a one-to-one about what's actually going on there. But I think once you've reread it and you start to take things in the context of what I've just suggested in this video, it'll give you a bit more of a clue as to what's actually being said, rather than fearing the worst. Okay, so good luck with that, Will, and hope you get the keys to your new home very soon. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you here again this week. Thank you so much indeed for your questions. As I said earlier on, if you want to submit your questions to us, there's various ways you can get in contact with us. The first is via email. You can send your questions in to us via our email address, which is happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. That's happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. You can also submit questions via our website, which is wiggywam.co.uk. That's wiggywam.co.uk. Set up your free profile on there. Join the amazing WiggyWam community. Get involved. There's all sorts of resources on there, videos that we've produced in terms of taking you through the journey of buying and selling a property, and a whole bunch of other really exciting resources on there. So get involved on the website. Make sure you sign up there. You can also submit questions via the Twitter account, which is at WiggyWam_UK. That's at WiggyWam_UK. And we'll be back same time next week doing this once again. Very much looking forward to seeing you all again. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be of service to you. And if you haven't yet got your copy of Home Buyer Secrets, I'm going to encourage you to do that, because I think this spring market is going to be pretty intense in a lot of different ways, and you definitely need to know some of the insider secrets that we're sharing in this book. So go to homebuyersecrets.co.uk and grab yourself a copy of that book. You'll also get part of access to our full training video series, which will actually guide you through in greater detail than I can go into in the book, through the process of buying and selling a property, which will be fantastic. So if there's anything else that we can do to serve you guys, please do let us know. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you again, same time, same place next week, and have an amazing week. Lots of love, God bless, and see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.